Guys, today I'm going to be talking about bare shaft tuning a traditional bow. There are many different ways you can tune a trad bow, and I'm going to do different videos on each way, but today I want to talk about my favorite method, and that is bare shaft tuning. If you like this, please like and subscribe. That way I'll know to do more of this kind of content. Let's jump right into this. Tuning your bow to get perfect arrow flight can be really beneficial. One, it is going to give you a little bit more accuracy. Now, if you're a really bad shot, tuning your bow is not a magic bullet that's going to make you suddenly a good shot. But it will, if you're already a good shot, it will slightly improve your accuracy. Another reason, I'm a big bow hunter, and the better your arrow is tuned to your bow, the straighter that arrow flies, the better penetration you're going to get. Also, your arrow is going to be a lot quieter in flight. So those are probably some of the main reasons that it's really important to tune your bow. Now, when bare shaft tuning, the type of target you use is really important. And I highly recommend a foam target. I think probably the worst target you can use is a bag target. In fact, if you all you have access to is a bag target, don't even do this. This right here is a compressed hay bale, and it works pretty good. It does not work as good as a foam target, but if you shoot enough arrows and you can get a general idea, it works pretty good. That's just what I've got right now. But if you don't already have a target and you're fixing to go out and buy one, I would highly recommend just getting a foam target. That's what's going to give you the most consistent results. Also, before you get into bare shaft tuning, you want to have your bow reasonably set up. And when I'm talking about this, just reasonably tuned before you get into fine tuning with a bare shaft. So before you even start, you want to get your brace height worked out. You want to get where your bow is shooting the smoothest and quietest with adjusting your string length. And I'll do another video on that if you don't know, but you want to get your brace height set. Also, if you're a split finger shooter, a Mediterranean style, a good starting point is to put your knocking point 3/8 of an inch above square. If you shoot 3 fingers under like I'm doing, I like to start out about 5/8 of an inch above square. Now that will all change, but that's just a really good starting place. Also, you want your bow to be set up just like it's going to be when you go hunting. So or if you're not a hunter, any accessories you're going to put on your bow, anything you're going to do to it, go ahead and get your bow set up with all of that before you start this. So I've got string silencers, and I've got a quiver on here with some arrows in it. I've got Velcro down here to act as silencers. You know, everything you're going to do to your bow, go ahead and get all of that set up. So when you tune it, it's exactly the way it needs to be, so you're not adding any other variables to it. There's 2 different ways that people bare shaft trad bows. One way is they like to shoot the arrow and then film it slow-mo with a camera, and that way they can see how the arrow flight is and make their adjustments. I don't do that. I like to just shoot a bare shaft into the target and see how it impacts. See if it's knock left or knock right or knock high or low. That's what this video is going to be about, but there is another way you can do it too, which works, but I prefer this way. Now, the first thing you really want to focus on is your release. I don't care how good your bow is tuned, if you have a bad release, you're probably not going to get good arrow flight. And I don't really have a very good release, so sometimes it's kind of frustrating. Your bow can be perfectly tuned, and some days it is shooting like a laser beam, and some days you can see that arrow kicking out again. And it's not that your bow is getting in and out of tune, it's that your release is not consistent. A really good release is going to give you much better arrow flight. Also, there's other factors that can go into bare shaft tuning. A grip. You know, you can doing everything the same. You can squeeze that bow really hard and get bad arrow flight. You can hold the grip different and get bad arrow flight. You know, so there's other factors involved in this than just having, you know, your arrow perfectly adjusted to your bow. So make sure you have a consistent grip and a consistent release before you start all this. Also, when you're doing bare shaft tuning, don't just shoot the arrow once or twice before you start making an adjustment. Have your particular arrow and you shoot it. I'd shoot that arrow at least 5 or 6 times before I made a conclusion. Is the spine too weak or too stiff or knock too high or too low? So shoot it over and over and see a consistent pattern on it. Now, also you want to hold your bow vertical. You definitely do not want to can it when you're doing this. So just hold it perfectly straight up and down. Another thing is when I'm starting out to bare shaft, I want to get the knock, the up and down, the arrow porpoising, the knock, up and down knock travel first. So first off, you can do it the other way, but I prefer to adjust knock travel height first. And after that, then you can start worrying about left to right travel. A lot of guys, I don't do this, but if you're really into this and just really want to be anal about it, once you've got your bare shaft, you can weigh what your feathers would weigh, and you can take some tape and say if your feathers, I don't know, weigh 18 grains, 15 grains, whatever, with the glue and all that, you can put that amount of tape on the back of it to offset that. I don't get that particular about it, but you can do that if you want to. I would start out at 10 yards. That's probably where if you're only going to do this at one distance, I'd do it at 10 yards. And once you have it perfect at 10, you can move back to 15, then 20, then 25. If you're really, really, really trying to get this good, you can go back to 30 and even beyond. But I would at least do it at 10 yards and then 15 yards. And if you want to go back farther than that, you can. When starting out bare shaft tuning, I like to get the up and down knock travel worked out of my arrow flight first. And the way you do that is when you shoot your arrow into the target and you look and you see how it impacts. I've got this exaggerated, if your bow is this bad, your bow is really out of tune, but this would be a knock high. So the way you would adjust for this is you would lower your knocking point on your bowstring. If your arrow impacts the target like this, that's a knock low. Now you would raise your knocking point on your bowstring. That's really simple, but sometimes you'll get false readings, and you can have a knock high like this, and what's really, instead of lowering your knocking point, what could be happening is your arrow, when it's shooting, is too low and it's hitting the shelf and kicking up. So in a false reading knock high, you would actually want to raise your knocking point up a little bit more. So, a knock high, generally you want to lower your knocking point. Knock low, you want to raise your knocking point. For a false reading knock high, you want to raise your knocking point. Now, raising your knocking point, just do this in very small increments, and I'm talking a 32nd to a 16th of an inch at a time, and find just the perfect place. Once you've got that just how you want it, that arrow will be impacting the target, very level, just like that. Now, first off, I want to talk about adjusting for a weak-spined arrow. A weak-spined arrow is when you shoot that arrow into the target, the knock is left. Okay? The simplest way to fix that is to jump up to the next stiffer spine. So, when you're bare shaft tuning, I suggest when looking at a chart and getting the exact arrow spine that the chart says, and when you figure that out, you're going to take your draw length, your arrow length, your point weight, and you're going to take all what that chart says, and you're going to get the exact shaft. I would buy that shaft, and then I would buy one shaft that is stiffer than that and one shaft that is weaker than that. And so if you can't do that, then you can do all this other stuff, but that is the simplest way. Just try different arrow spines. Having said that, again, once you shoot that arrow in like that and you get in a left knock, that indicates a weak spine. There are a number of things you can do if you want to use that shaft. First off, you can cut that arrow shaft down, and you know, if you've bought the arrows shafts that are way longer than you would regularly use. So the way I do that is I heat this up, pull the whole insert and point out, wrap masking tape around there, and I use a Dremel tool. I don't have an arrow shaft cutoff tool, but I cut it off, and I'd cut it off either a 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch at a time. And then I've got an arrow squaring device tool, and I'll square it up. So let's say that I'm shooting this thing and it's weak. So I cut off a 1/2 inch and it's getting a little bit better. I cut off another 1/2 inch, it's getting a little bit better. Finally, I've got it perfect like that. Well, I know that, you know, that's where it needs, you know, I've shortened that arrow enough that I have stiffened the spine of it where it's hitting straight. Probably a better way to do that, because most guys are going to already have a length arrow that they want to use and they don't want to cut their arrows, is adjusting the point weight. And here again, you can heat this up, take this out. You can use heavier inserts. This is a 12 grain insert, but they make these inserts, you can get them all the way up to 100 grains. You can get these field tips, I order them from 125 to 300 grains. So if you lighten the point weight, you're stiffening your arrow. If you're making your point weight heavier, you're weakening the arrow. So in this case, if I want to do it, adjust this, you know, I've got a knock left weak spined arrow. So what I can do, if I just want to adjust the point weight, is start using lighter and lighter point weights. Now that doesn't always work if a guy is a hunter and he has a certain weight broadhead he wants to use, but that is another way. Just keep using lighter and lighter point weights until that straightens back out. The last way, and I really use this more for fine tuning, is on your arrow shelf, on your bow, on your leather side plate. You know, you've got the rug rest that the arrow sits on, and the leather side plate. You know, if you're shooting off a shelf, if you're one of these more modern guys that's using like a springy rest, if you will pull that out, if you will move the arrow away from the shelf, that is also going to compensate for weak spine. Now, everything I'm talking about is for a right-handed shooter. If you're left-handed, just reverse everything I'm saying. Okay, I'm only at about 12 yards, just kind of starting out, but you can see this arrow is a little bit knock right, it's a little bit high. So I want to shoot this shaft about a 6 times, and if it keeps doing the same thing, then I'll make a correction. Probably what I will do is add 50 grains to the point weight and see if that will weaken the spine enough for it to enter straight. Okay, you can see what just a little bit heavier point weight, going up 50 grains in point weight, can do. That's a pretty good arrow. I'm still only at about 12 yards, and I'd probably want to do that back to at least 25, but that's kind of what you're looking for. That looks better than the last time. When you're bare shaft tuning a bow, one other thing to consider is a recurve bow that has got more of a center shot cutout riser is easier to do. It gives you a larger range of arrows and spines that you can use. If you're using a traditional longbow, you know, you've got a grip and say it does not have this cutout riser, you're shooting pretty much right off the shelf, right off your knuckle, it's going to be a little bit harder. Still works really good, but it's not going to be as easy as a bow with a cutout center shot riser. Also, the types of arrows, you know, you've got carbon arrows, aluminum arrows, and wood arrows. It works, this technique will work with all three. Most guys shooting wood arrows don't do this. Usually if you're bare shafting, you're using either carbon or aluminum, but it will also work with wood. It's just you've got to retaper. If you do cut it and shorten it each time, you've got to retaper the point end where you attach your broadhead or field point. Main thing about bare shafting is you want to take your time. You know, you don't want to rush through this. You know, you do it over several days and shoot each shaft, you know, 5 or 6 times at least before you make a decision to cut the shaft or put you a heavier weight on it. And it's, in my opinion, bare shaft tuning is the best way to tune your bow. I'm going to be doing some other videos on many other different ways to tune a traditional bow. They're good too. This just happens to be my favorite. Well, if you guys have made it this far, you might be interested in this, so please like it and subscribe it. And I've got a lot more of this kind of content coming. We'll see you next time.